Hey, everybody. Happy International Women's Day. We are very happy to have three amazing women today. And this is Christina Chiu, my
Hello.
fabulous co-host partner. While we're waiting, everybody drop your hellos into the chat so that we can give a few people a little time to sort of log in and make sure that they're logged in. If you are logged in on either Facebook or YouTube, you should be able to chat live with us. And if you post a comment, we'll say hi to you. So, tell us where you're from. And today I wanted to tell you that it is March. So in March, we have a fellowship open right now for writers who are parents. And the fellowship will give you $1,000. It'll give you a year of mentorship. Go on our website, which is penparentis.org, and check it out. And hi, Jamie Clark out there. And so go ahead and go on our website. If you have a child under 10, this is an open fellowship for you to, win some money and get some visibility and some mentorship. And so we want you to apply. The fellowship closes on April the 17th. The other thing, while we wait for people to gather a little bit, is that we will be in AWP in Philadelphia this month. So on the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, we'll be down there. If you are there, please stop by. We have a table this year. We've never had a table before. We don't know quite what we're doing. So we're very excited about the table. Come by and you can talk to us, find out more about membership, find out more about the other things we do. If you have a book and you have a kid, you're welcome to tell Christina about it. And maybe she'll have us, put you in the lineup for the salons. There's a lot going on in March. So we're really, really happy that you're here. And now I will say let's meet some authors and then we'll do some more announcements.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Chiu. And like Milda said, I co-host and I curate the series. Today, we're going to talk about Untold Histories because, everything's about the story, right? We always talk about the story, we worship it in every form, but we don't often talk so much about which stories get told and which stories don't get told. And when stories do get told, who tells them, why, when, all of that. And we have three authors today who are lined up to do this for you. Our first author tonight will be Kapphahn. She's the author of Immigrant Daughter, Stories You Never Told Me, which was a recipient of the Center for Fiction's Christopher Downey Award. Our second reader will be Sandell Morse. She's the prize-winning author of The Spiral Shell, A French Village Reveals Its Secrets of Jewish Resistance in World War II. Our third author will be Dr. Stephanie Han. She is calling in, or she's zooming in from Hawaii, correct? Yeah. And her book is Swimming in Hong Kong, and it was the recipient of the Patterson Fiction Prize and a finalist for AWP's Grace Paley Prize. So everyone, please welcome our authors.
Yay, everybody! Meet them all. They're so amazing. And we are probably the first reading series in history to have somebody from Maine and somebody from Hawaii on the same window. We span America across the country. We do not leave out anybody. So I do want to, of course, thank our sponsors. So first of all, we have to thank NYSCA because they gave us a lot of money. The New York Council of the Arts is a wonderful funder. Thank you. Yay. And so thanks to them, thanks to poets and writers who also generously gave to allow our fabulous authors to be here tonight. I want to also shout out to David Harris and Megan Franzen for donating tonight. And of course, to our corporate sponsor of the month. Woohoo! It's the Center for Independent Journalists. You are invited to attend their freelancer conference on March 11th and 12th. That is this weekend. It is live online. It is 2 full days of learning from 60 diverse speakers about the business of independent writing. They will tell you explicitly what editors want in pitches. They will tell you how other freelancers thrive and succeed. And we are going to be putting the link for tickets live into the chat right now. And the best, I think this is the best, is that Pen Parentis is an affiliate. Woohoo. So if you sign up through this link, then you'll be helping our sponsor, but you'll also be helping us. And previous attendees that are actually Pen Parentis members have said that this is a life-changing conference for them. Like, they really made amazing connections, and that really opened doors for them in their freelance writing career. So I will give you a second to click that link. And the price will go up to $99 on the day of the event. So right now it's $79 for the weekend. So it's totally worth it. Get the access right now. Also, you should know, since we're all like writer parents, you should know that every panel will be available for the whole month. So you can watch it at your leisure. Even if you can't attend, you really should register and, benefit. So that's it. Happy sponsors. Thank you so much for sponsoring us, Center for Independent Journalists. And now on to this amazing salon that on International Women's Day, a room full of women.
Exactly.
Our nation.
So our first author will be Kapphahn. She is the author of Immigrant Daughter, Stories You Never Told Me. Like I said, it was the recipient of the Center for Fiction's Christopher Doheny Award. It was also shortlisted for a Del Sol Press Prize. She's received artist grants from the Queen's Council on the Arts, and her writing has appeared in Motherwell Magazine, Newton Literary, the Feminist Press Anthology, This Is the Way We Say Goodbye, and Cure Magazine. She earned an MFA in writing from Columbia University. Kapphahn is an adjunct lecturer at University of New York at Lehman College, very interesting, in the Bronx. She grew up near the mountains in Colorado and now lives between two bridges in Queens, which we should hear about, and in New York, and with her husband and 2 sons. Everyone, please welcome Kapphahn.
Yay!
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just so excited about this organization, and I'm so pleased to have discovered you, and I'm happy to be here tonight. Thanks to Christina and Milda for organizing and working so hard, and I just really am happy to celebrate women tonight. It just so happens that I've been exploring the theme of untold histories for many, many, many years, and especially in my memoir, Immigrant Daughter, Stories You Never Told Me. So I'll be reading from this evening. You would know that when I was growing up in Colorado, my Croatian mom really withheld her history from me. She died of ovarian cancer when I was 22. And it took me a long time to realize that I didn't just lose my mom. I lost all the relatives that I'd never known. I lost her World War II stories, her orphan stories, her fighting tuberculosis stories, her escape from communist Yugoslavia stories, and her countless immigration stories. So Immigrant Daughter, Stories You Never Told Me is a mother-daughter adventure love story that takes place in 6 countries. And it's a story where a daughter gives voice to her mother's unspoken history and in the process heals them both. The scene I'm going to read to you tonight, it takes place in the early 1950s. Mariana is my mom, and she's a teenager in this scene. Baka is her grandmother, and Baka is desperately trying to get her out of the former Yugoslavia because Mariana is very sick with TB. You would also know that both of Mariana's parents died of TB, and as this scene starts, they're going to visit the cemetery, the big grand cemetery in Zagreb called Mirogoj. And she thinks this might be the last time she gets to visit her parents' grave. Baca and Mariana stood in front of her parents' grave. A wooden marker said the Cañar family, Gatitza Cañar, 1906 to 1943, Anton Cañar, 1907 to 1945. Her grandmother patted her forehead with a handkerchief and put down the basket she was carrying. She knelt down to sweep away dead leaves and flowers. Mariana knelt down beside her. In her hand, the dried leaves disintegrated into tiny pieces. Baca took 2 candles from her basket and lit them. One day, Mariana planned to give her parents a proper gravestone. If she hadn't been sick for so long, she would already be working to help. Will this be the last time I come? Mariana asked. She began to cough. Her grandmother handed her a handkerchief. Someone is helping us get you an Italian holiday visa. Baca heaved herself off the ground. She rubbed her knees, which had gotten stiff. Mariana stared at her parents' names. You always wanted to go to Rome, Bakitsa reminded her softly. Mariana looked at her. She wondered, how could she leave her grandmother? Yet it was true. She always wanted to see Rome. And her grandmother knew it was her dream to live in New York City and study art. Where would I stay? She asked cautiously. Everything was spinning beyond her control. A couple strolled past them on their way to another grave. Baca lifted her finger to her lips. When they were far enough away, she whispered, your aunt and uncle will figure that out. They will find a place for you to stay while they find a way to get to you a visa. How long will that take? I don't know. What about you? Mariana stood up. Blood rushed to her head. She felt dizzy and weak. They hadn't had enough to eat today. She thought about Rome and felt excited and nervous all at once. She pushed up her coat collar. Baca, did you hear me? What about you? I'm fine here, my little one. No, you aren't. We're barely making it, Baca. We're always hungry. Why can't you come? Isn't there some way? For an old woman like me, I have spent 76 years on this earth. Mariana, you're only 19. You need to get out of this country. If you stay, who knows what will happen? What I want more than anything is your health. I would do anything for that. Every night I pray to God to make your lungs healthy. Mariana put her arm around her grandmother and rested her head on her shoulder. Her teeth were beginning to chatter. I'm tired, Bakitsa. I want to go home. We've been here long enough, her grandmother agreed. Baca? Yes, my little one. I'm going to send for you as soon as I can. I'm going to take care of you. I promise. Her grandmother nodded, patting Mariana's flushed cheek. Of course, we can't be apart for very long. I'll come wherever you are. Thank you.
Yay!
So I'm so curious about something before we move on. You know, this whole idea of your mom not being there, I think with a lot of immigrants, whether they're alive or not, they don't tell their children anything that transpired prior to getting to America, right? So how did you get all the information that you needed?
Well, like part of the book is written through my perspective, and then it alternates chapters I wrote from my mom's perspective and all her family and even my father's perspective. My dad knew a little bit more than I did. And then I interviewed people that were alive during that lived a similar time period, similar issues with communist Yugoslavia or World War II, or that had immigrated to Italy, stayed in refugee camps, and then ended up in South America, because my mom was in Argentina and Venezuela, where she finally met my dad. And so I tried to I made the rule that I had to base every scene on something I knew or some memory that she had left me. And I followed the geography of her immigration story. So those were my 2 rules for all the imagined history. And I did try to write it in the beginning as journalistic, but that wasn't good enough, because what I really wanted as a person was to experience her emotional truth. And in order to do that, I had to imagine it and enter a more fictional world.
Did you have any difficulties getting it published because it's about Croatia and not the United States and this country?
Yes. I mean, I was lucky because of my award. It is published by Audible, but the print copy I put out independently. At the same time, it's done better than if I would have gone with a smaller press. Like, it's like Croatian readers from Australia or China, or, you know, they find it somehow and they write to me. And because I won that award, it came with like Audible. I recorded the book a year ago and it came out through Audible too. So that was very motivating. Yeah.
That's so neat. So you won the Audible award before the book was actually in print. That's amazing. Very interesting way to, that's a cool way to get around.
Very unusual.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's had a really strong response. And, you know, when I get out, when it's not the pandemic time, and I was really getting out there and doing like 15 readings, people were really hearing about it. And then, so I've been really lucky that way.
That's great. Well, you got a round of applause from Helene out in the audience. And David Harris said, having those rules is interesting and it was a great detail. So congratulations, people in the audience are paying attention.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So, but we're going to come back to a discussion at the end when our other readers do their readings. So our next reader, everyone, is a friend of mine and a really, really wonderful, generous soul. Sandell Morse is the prize-winning author of the memoir, The Spiral Shell. A French village reveals its secrets of Jewish resistance in World War II. Morse's work appears in Best American Essays, Plowshares, The New England Review, Fourth Genre Ascent, Solstice, and Tiferet, among others. The Spiral Shell is a silver medal winner in the Story Circle Women's Book Awards and a finalist for the New Hampshire Literary Awards. Morse lives in New Hampshire. Everyone, please welcome Sandell.
Thank you, Christina. This is an absolute honor to be here with you and with Nilda tonight. And I have to just say, Catherine, I'm reading The Immigrant Daughter, and I am loving it. And I really can't wait to finish. I love what you've done with it. And my book takes place at about that same time. My book is memoir, and I do a lot of imagining as well, but in a different way. So my book is called The Spiral Shell. A French village reveals its secrets of Jewish resistance in Vichy, France. And I always have trouble holding this thing up. I don't know how to do it. But anyway, it's a double journey. And it is a journey in which I uncover stories of both people who lived through Vichy France, and the other journey is my own spiritual journey back to my Jewish identity. And if this book has a main character, it is Germaine Poliakov. And I met her when she was 92 in 2011, I think it was. And she was a caretaker in a secret house that protected Jewish refugee children during the Second World War. And this was in the south of France. And she met and married a young resistance fighter at the same time. And during that time, they had 3 children. And after the war, both survived. Germaine became a single mother. He left her, but he would not give her a divorce because he wanted the children, and she refused to give up the children. So she stayed in the south of France for a full year after the war ended. And the scene that I'm going to read to you takes place after she returned to Paris. And I think it was 46. And her son was 4 years old, and she had another child who was almost 3, and another who was not quite 2. And the place where Germaine took care of these children was called La Colonie, and there's a reference to that here. And I'm trying to and Ralph was her husband's name. And so I think you have enough at the moment. I pictured a morning in spring, chestnut trees in full bloom. On the sidewalk in front of the refugee hotel, Germaine straddled the low bar of her bicycle. All of her possessions came from the generosity of others. Clothing from the Joint, American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. Her bicycle from the Rothschild Foundation. One day, in the not-so-distant future, someone would steal her bicycle, and strangely, Ralph, who was good with his hands, would find parts and build her another. Arlene lifted her arms. Germaine hoisted her up and set her down inside a wicker basket fastened to the bicycle's handlebars. Then Arlene went into a basket on the back fender. Daniel sat on the seat between his mother's legs. Germaine pushed off. She rode through Paris's strangely empty streets. No cars, no buses, no trains, no petrol. She thought of Ralph. He owned and drove a red car. Where did he find petrol? As she pedaled her 3 children through the streets, she noticed the absence of sound. No whoosh of buses, blare of taxi horns, shouts or whistles. The city had not been bombed, but toward the end of the war, the outskirts had. Factories feeding the German war machine had burned and blanketed Paris with soot and ash. An acrid scent lingered. Paris's characteristic white limestone had blackened. Germaine missed the clean facades and clean statues. She missed the city's pulse. She swerved to avoid a pile of rubble, no one to take it away. She supposed she should be grateful to be here at all. Before this war, Germaine had thought of herself as French, only French. She'd been engaged to marry a Catholic man and had little sense of a Jewish identity. Now she thought of herself as both French and Jewish. In La Colonie, she celebrated Shabbat and Hanukkah with the girls. But I didn't feel comfortable with ritual, she said. I always felt there was no God. What is God? She linked ritual to God. I did not. I linked ritual to community and continuity, the generations that preceded mine, the generations that would come later. Yet I often ask the same question, what is God? It wasn't easy to call yourself a Jew in post-war Paris, where Jews reminded Parisians of all they wanted to forget, occupation and collaboration. Ashamed, confused, and wondering what had gone wrong in their beloved city and their beloved country, Jews too wanted to forget. Most of the surviving Jews were French citizens, men and women who had believed in their land of liberté, égalité, fraternité. Yet their officials and gendarmes had compiled lists of names and handed them over to the Germans. Better not to dwell on these things. Germaine did not dwell, nor did she openly declare she was a Jew. After an immediate but brief crackdown, informers and collaborators blended into the mix of post-war life. No one spoke of past deeds, yet all could breathe the suffering and guilt hanging in the air. Germaine did not want her children to feel like prey, and she made a conscious decision. She would not tell them they were Jews, nor would she say they were Protestant or Catholic. It was as if she thought she could leave a blank space that no one would notice. Not the outside world, not the children. Truth pressed at that empty space. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you, Sandell. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that when you got to the part about what is God, it reminds me so much of Night. When Elie Wiesel asks, all the existential questions that we all ask during war, during great suffering. Um,
Called out.
how did you come to this? Like when you were thinking about the project that you were going to work on, how did this one land in your lap? Like, people always say, "Oh, you should write about." I have friends who will say that. You really, I've been through blah blah blah. You really should write about my life. But really, here you wrote about this woman's life. Like here you have this story. Like, how did you land on it?
That's it, Christina. I landed on it. I went to France on a writer's residency for Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, and because I knew that it was on the Pilgrim's route, and because I was looking for new material, and because when I hear about pilgrims and crusades, I always think and wonder about Jews, that I started investigating and researching, and really through a bunch of networking. And Germaine was not my original person that I was going to research. My original person was a young 9-year-old resistance courier named Jean Hirsch, and my maiden name is Hirsch, so I really felt that connection. But he would never meet with me. And so I had another friend and translator who, when I met her for the very first time in person, said to me, "I know you're very disappointed that John Hirsch won't meet with you, but I have someone for you to meet." And that's how I met her.
That's so kind.
For years,
the generosity of it is so good.
This was like 8-9 years in the making. I mean, I went back year after year, and we became very good friends. And one day she said to me, "Would you like to meet one of the girls?" Well, she meant one of the girls that she took care of during the war, who was 10 years younger than Germaine. So then I tell her story as well. So I'm right in the middle. Germaine was 10 years older than I, and Yvonne, the other woman, was 10 years. Oh no, Germaine was 20 years older than I, and Yvonne is 10 years older than I. She's still around, and I'm almost 83.
Hardly. It's impossible.
Okay, we will definitely come back because I have more questions.
And because Sandell has a cool story. Don't miss. Sandell, just so you know, you've also got applause from, is that your dog?
I don't know. I'm not making any sound.
What is the sound? I hear like.
What's that sound? Yes.
I hear sounds too.
Going on. I don't know where that is. Well, it's somewhere. Anyway. I don't know what that is.
I can mute and see if it's me or not.
It's funny. I don't know. It sounds like somebody eating the furniture. But anyway, I just wanted you to know, Sandell, that Helene and Lisette, you got rounds of applause from Ingrid, from people out in the audience. They're all like sending you applause icons. So. Go on, Christina. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, our final reader is Dr. Stephanie Han. She's an author, educator, and speaker. Swimming in Hong Kong was the recipient of the Patterson Fiction Prize and finalist for AWP's Grace Paley Prize, the Spokane Prize, and the Asian Book Blog Award. Her writing has been recognized by the South China Morning Post, Nimrod International Journal, and Santa Fe Writers Project. A Pen and Voe Fellow, she received grants from the Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs and was the inaugural English literature PhD of City of University of Hong Kong. She speaks to us from Hawaii, home of her family since 1904. Everyone, please welcome Stephanie.
Yay!
Aloha, everybody. Today, I think I'm going to be reading not from my collection of short fiction, but a poetry manuscript, and it does have an interesting kind of untold story. So many years ago, in I think around 2008, I lived in Hong Kong prior, but I moved to Hong Kong. At this time, I was deciding that maybe I would quit writing. I was sick of being rejected. I was a professional reject. I mean, my rejections, I mean, I could write a dissertation on how they evolve from like the envelope and the little notes to the online submission. And they number in the hundred, if not thousands, seriously. What changed my rejection and ultimately the publication of my book was the internet, because prior to the internet, people could not imagine some of the global pictures, I believe, that I was portraying in my stories, like a Black woman and a Chinese man. I mean, you never see these two groups together since at the time when I was writing. So when I decided that I wasn't going to tell anybody I was a writer and gave up writing, I defaulted, of course, to poetry. And poetry was, when I don't have words for anything, I write poetry. And I think this is because despite my strong love of narrative, there are no expectations to me of poetry except for my own self. You know, you don't, I mean, I have this poetry manuscript. I want to get it published, but it's not, it doesn't have the same, it did not have at the time the same psychological weight. I had, you know, I had wanted to be a fiction writer, right? I had published a poetry chapbook, but that was different. So, flash forward, I was teaching writing. I was like, okay, I'm a writer, you know, kind of got back into it as students do. And out of the blue one day, I got this program. It was a program of a choir performance, and it was sent to me on the email by my very first lover at the age of 17. And we haven't seen each other probably since the age of 19. He sent this to me, and I was thinking about this. And so at the time, what I realized was I was doing different kinds of writing, but I was writing poetry about what was going on emotionally, really, in my life, which was dealing with motherhood, the collapse of my marriage, you know, living in a foreign land. And then I was writing this kind of perky, happy blog for my mom, which was like, hi, and my son just learned the word apple, you know. And so it just kind of was these two different sides. And then this, you know, getting this program, it aroused a lot of sentiment. And so that was a little bit of the story behind this poem. So I thought I'd read this poem to you. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of post it up here so I can kind of get a little better view. Is that okay? Okay. Out of the Depths, 2011. Bach knew voices peel notes before gods. In foreign lands, terrain is the body. Journeys, autumnal kiln walls, cobblestones beating boot leather, dust of clay and time. And alabaster youth towers, crowds gather transfixed. Madonna's electric blues, her child's peach fists, halos, halos everywhere. This air shouts love and belief, passion, a cigarette nipping dusk, March cold whipping the back of my knees, a quiver and kiss, a penance for longing, the hope and embrace of supple flesh, passion so wide, skin barely holds it. Memory is now. What is love but an ancient bridge over an ageless water? Flocks of birds that hurry to heaven, skies that echo eyes. In youth, one knows its purpose, the creation of memories, urgent, desperate, alive. Such things follow me to China. Here, continents and decades away, I push back memories' cloying scent to stay alive. What now but to sift and store? My love from the past remains in a box I always carry. This is what it means to hold innocence, to smell, pine. What of love now? A familiar traveler, a wanderer, a man of rage and longing, a rough rock of intelligence. Madness, it suffocates the heart. Poetry is difference. We unfold like origami. Lines remain to create the map I came to follow. The compass rose blooms and points, directs us to deserts and possibility. Now I know the gravity of love, how it breaks and mends its thirsty, jagged roots, flowers and soil, the cracking of its perfect wood, the light it demands, gives, or death. This ocean comes. I have moved countries again. Time from one cradle to another, love, bound in a man without a country, began in the hiss of summer's heat through the eye of an empire's possession. This east swallows its minions. I am a witness, nothing more. A boat ferries me, delivers me on hands and knees to anchor dreams that sweat from my flesh, to love that awakens again. I learned to sing for love. St. James Church, Florence, Italy, 1982. Out of the depths, aus der Tiefe.
So Stephanie, how do you feel like when you have difficult periods that poetry is the thing that keeps you in flow?
Yeah, it can, because then I'm just playing with language. And a lot of times, I like narrative, but you have to figure it out. And with poetry, I don't have pressure to figure anything out. I can just kind of blob out and feel. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like narrative poetry, and I really don't like language poetry, I will say. But I don't put the pressure on myself to make sense of what happens when I engage in poetry. But I do put that pressure when I'm trying to make a story, because you're making a story.
Yeah, with narrative, there's that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Journey, and we need to understand the journey.
Right.
Well, no, that was really wonderful. It was a treat because I wasn't expecting poetry tonight, and it's lovely sometimes just to have images play across your dance across your
mind. Is the manuscript currently out on submission, or is it something?
Yeah, I've started. I have started submitting it. I can always take a stab at it and kind of hobble it forward, but I have started submitting it now. That's my Saturday night activity. Submitting my poetry manuscript. And then the thing is that I realized this was also about dislocation, right? Because this was about traveling when you're a young person, and I was overseas and not traveling, but living.
Nice. Well, you have some fans out in the audience. They're giving you big hearts. So,
yeah, I love so much of the images in there. Like, even this, it's funny. I was just doing origami the other day, and I don't understand origami. It seems kind of this is probably why I never did stuff like that. I cannot figure out stuff like that. Like, why do you do them? And if you can just unfold it, why do it? Like, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, so I did think that was so true, that we do unfold like origami, and then it's like, well, what was that? What's that purpose for? Why don't we break into a larger discussion at this point?
I just want to make sure that everybody, like, we know, like, how old your kids are, how many millions of kids you have, where they are all over the world, and like that kind of thing. So if you guys could just run through real quick. I have 2 older teens. I mean, I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old, almost 20-year-old. I'm gonna die. Okay.
Stephanie, how about you? What?
I have one 15-year-old boy, very boy.
Wonderful. You, Sandell?
I have 3 sons, 60, 58, and 55, and 4 grandchildren. 3 granddaughters who were all born first, and my oldest son said, "This is Sandell's revenge." And the oldest one is 25, and the next one is 22, and then I have 19, and I have a grandson who is 18.
Any
Wow.
children turn out to be writers?
You know, my sons are all creative. Two of them have MFAs in film, one in fiction film and the other in documentary. And another son is a potter. And the grandchildren are still, they're just trying to figure things out, but they write well. They're very creative. And yeah, they're just wonderful.
I want to hear the rest of the story you started backstage. Can you start that over? Would you mind?
Do you want to do it right now?
Would
Yes.
you mind?
No, I wouldn't mind at all. So I was quite finished with parenting, and I loved my grandparenting because at the time we had a really nice, wonderful house on the sea in Maine. And I just had the joy of being a grandparent. And then one of my granddaughters, her mother abandoned her. And truly, she was visiting at that point in the summer with the other grandkids, and her mother gave up her apartment, lost her job, and went to follow her sensei, her Buddhist teacher in upstate New York. And no one knew whether she was coming back or not. And I offered temporary sanctuary to my son and his daughter, Nina, who was 13. And I thought, well, a year, Richard, until you can figure things out. And so then we were committed until Nina graduated from high school. So there I was. At that time, I was 71. I was a writer. I had just begun this book, which I didn't know was a book at the time, but it was a project. And so, yeah, it was very interesting.
Full-time caregiving.
And that is
thought you were going to be like in the golden years doing whatever.
Right.
On
Whatever the golden years are.
So there it is. It never ends. You never know when you might be called back.
You never know where you're going, but wherever you end up is where it's good. It's good because I learned so much mothering that child, and we are so close now. It's been very lucky. It's wonderful. So
that's great.
And my book debuted. I was accepted by a publisher. I was 80, and it debuted when I was 80.
Yes!
So,
there's hope.
Go, women, keep going.
There it is. And not to leave you out, Catherine, how old are you?
Yeah, so I have two boys, 9 and 15 also, which has made the pandemic and living in an apartment very interesting. So yeah, very, very interesting.
Absolutely. Do you guys find enough time to write with your teenagers? They don't interfere?
My 9-year-old is the Spitfire. I'm like, oh, teenagers are so nice.
The audience should know that Catherine blocked the door to be sure no one would.
The technology makes it so complicated. But yeah. I've been, I feel like if I can get up before everyone, then like if I can just, I don't count on a lot of time. I just count on like 5 to 6 in the morning or,
Early.
and then I'm also really admire Stephanie. I also started a poetry manuscript, which I'm just finishing the first draft of, and it is a narrative memoir, poems and memoir. And so I think I appreciated, Stephanie, what you were saying about the form and freedom. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And Christina was saying that Catherine had to close her door to make sure no children came in.
No, not just
came
close,
in.
lock
He
it.
came in during Sandell's. He was in and out to get.
They have to
Because
see.
he couldn't wait. There were some headphones over there or something.
You can't keep them out. They're there. You just have to work around it. Yep.
So let's talk about something that I find really interesting, and I'm hoping you guys can actually address this in a way that everyone can kind of understand it, because it always seems to change. We have two memoirs, and Stephanie, you've been writing essays forever. You have like 10 million essays that you've published. Your list is like this long. I was initially going to read like all the different ones, and I was like, you know what, I can't read these. There are too many. But when it comes to writing memoir or even like essay, I guess there's that creative nonfiction area where things can kind of be fudged a little bit and a little here or a little there. But when it comes to memoir, I mean, some authors have gotten really pinged for not having certain details correct. And how do you, like, that alone makes me really nervous even writing memoir. How do you guys deal with that?
On my side, I mean, for this book, like, how is it there? There you go. There we are. There's me and my mom. Like, a lot of people are gone, and I didn't have any relatives, and I didn't speak the language. So, like, I really just was like, I'm going to do the best that I can to try to make it as accurate as possible. And I wrote a lot of it before there was so much access online to find out everything. And I did, try to get it accurate. But I think, I mean, I wanted it to be suspenseful. I wanted it to be a gripping story. I wanted it to feel like a page turner where you felt like that mystery feel. And I mean, I feel like a scene, I mean, you have to artificially, I wanted the background to not feel like reading background or historical. I wanted it to all feel like part of the story. So for me, I mean, that was another rule. I was like, the background can't go in unless it somehow fits the characters and what they're talking about over the coffee table, or, so for me, because even my fiction was memoir, I was always trying to make it possible. And then for my parts, I tried to be as accurate as possible, but I'm not a huge journal keeper, which I know writers aren't supposed to say. I'm very good with emotional truth or how things felt. And so that was my goal, to keep that. And then if I have to look up things, like, that way. And I think that scene, like, a lot of the readers are like, it's so cinematic. And I think I'm also dyslexic. And I think, oh, okay, well, that makes sense, because I'm very visual. So I have to go with my strengths, which aren't another writer's strengths, So that was kind of my strategy, to, as much as possible, to try to make it feel. And even with the poetry now, because it's a memoir, like, I'm trying to, but also it's my truth and my memory, and it's not going to be somebody else's.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Stephanie, how about you?
Well, primarily I consider myself a fiction writer. When I'm writing poetry, obviously it's a little more autobiographical, right? And so it moves into that memoir state. I think I just focus more on emotional truth. And then I've invented characters and personas. Like, there was one I invented in this manuscript, and she's, she said the poem, like, that is the poem from her. And I had included this little bio and story about her. And then I thought, actually, it's not really necessary. It doesn't, that's for me to know that there was this other this other person's voice in the poem. It's okay that other people don't know it and they think it's me. I mean, I don't give a shit, it's just whatever. It still works, it's not really strictly memoir in that sense. It's more, I guess, memory of feeling, or identifying with feeling. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. How about you, Sandell?
Well, I started out as a fiction writer, and I remember, Eudora Welty said, fiction is the lie that tells the truth. And I've begun to think that memoir is the truth that tells the lie. But I am really very, very careful. I do a lot of research. All of my events are researched and real. the time that whatever's happening in this memoir is happening at the time that it happened. I kept, I did keep a journal, and I recorded all of my interviews, and then I transcribed them. And so I had Germaine's voice. Now I had to work with a translator because I'm not fluent in French.
Mm.
And she came with me, and she too became a friend. And when I'm imagining, I signal the reader, and I say that I'm imagining, or it could have happened this way, or whatever. But everything, all of the characters are real people. They're in this little colony, the secret house. There was it was an amazing place and an amazing village, because this house was right in the center, in a little square, and at one end of the square was the huge Abbey of St. Peter, and another right across from it was a restaurant. And it was also, that house was run by the Jewish Scouts, which was a resistance organization, but the Catholic resistance was also working right across the street. And so Germaine told me about people who had these noms de guerre, and there was this Zolo who came to the La Colony to fix whatever needed to be fixed. And that was the name she gave me, and that was the story she gave me. So I really do, particularly with this book, I really wanted to go for accuracy. I did not want to fictionalize Germaine's story. I wanted her to live on, because she was basically an ordinary person. She was caught in extraordinary times, and she didn't think of herself as brave. And she just, and I have some line in the book where, where I talk about, like, what is brave? And perhaps I think that bravery is just some essential part of you, that you just act in a way that is just and right. So that's my story.
That's a very good answer.
Thank you.
I would like to know, so this is something that popped up in my head while Stephanie was talking, because there was a moment where you were almost done and you were like ready to give it all up. I want each of you to talk about a moment of self-doubt and how you got through it. Like, how did you flip into, yeah, screw this, I'm doing it, I'm finishing it, I'm sending it, whatever it is. Like, what was your moment? And how did you get through it?
Stephanie?
Okay, yeah. What got me back into writing was it's a compulsion, and I couldn't stop. So I wanted to stop, but I couldn't stop. So it was sort of a bit of a pain. But then I was trying to read and find things about people who quit, even, to sort of try to help me along with quitting. But I couldn't quit. And then I started teaching, and teaching is what brings me, it gets you excited because people are doing stories, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is kind of fun. And so I started again.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Catherine, did you want to add something?
Oh, I feel like I had so many rejections over so many years, because I worked on this project on and off for 20 years. And so I quit multiple times, and then the story would come back to haunt me. Like, somebody would ask about the book about my mom, or something magical would happen that would illuminate some history of hers, or suddenly my dad sent me their love letters, so suddenly I could include their real love letters in the story, or so all these sort of I think that happens when you're writing an untold history. Like, these magical things, like all of a sudden you write about a flower, and then you see the flower everywhere, So, and also I had a secret that I didn't know I was keeping, which I found out while I was writing the book, which was my dyslexia.
Oh, wow.
And so how hard it was to learn to write about my mom, and to get to tell all her secrets that she hadn't, processed or had frozen, because she had been through so much trauma, and it was so intergenerational. So it was also like if I don't do this, nobody will do it. And then I'll never feel like whole in that way. Like I have to process her losses in order to process her loss.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah. So that was, and turning 50, I was like, that's it. This book is coming out. I'm talking now, and that's it. I'm like, yeah.
How about you, Sandell?
About I have another little story. So I started writing in middle age. I went back to school, and I was matriculating for a Master of Arts in Liberal Studies at Dartmouth, and I ended up by chance in a fiction writing course taught by Ishmael Reed, and he just kept asking me what's next. So by the end of the 10 weeks, I had a novella. He sent me to his agent in New York, and I knew nothing. So
Those were the days.
climbed up the steps with the manuscript in hand, and I gave it to her, and I said, "Oh, I'm leaving Monday morning. Could I please have it back?" She looked at me and she says, "What is Ishmael doing to me?" I got the manuscript back from her, and she handed it back, and she said, "You want to write in the literaries all your life? Write like this. You want to write for me? Go home and read the bestseller list." I walked down those stairs and I said, "I don't think it would be so bad publishing in the literaries." That's what I did for about 40 years.
Nice. Way to fix her. We have a couple of questions from the audience, if you don't mind. So one is, and I'm just going to put it up so you can see it, when you are in writing mode versus research mode, what is your process? How many hours of the day do you work? Like in the morning versus the afternoon, at home, or in some kind of WeWork type space? Talk a little bit about your actual, like, how do you divide your time between researching and writing it all down and making it creative?
Well, I think I have to be really careful about, you can get lost in research and then you never write. And so
yeah, you changed people.
Yeah. And but the kind of reading that I had to do, I mean, I read so many histories of Vichy France, and I read diaries. I read all kinds of stuff, and I would just when I'm in creative mode, I make myself not stop to do research, and I put a placeholder in, and it's like, come back. And I don't have any sort of a time thing. I'm going to do research here. I'm going to write here. I love the writing much more than I love the research, but I love the learning with research too. So I guess it's find your own rhythm.
Great.
Stephanie?
Yeah, so actually it's funny you bring this up because I am right now sort of finishing research for a project. I said March 12th was my date, but it's going to have to, the research is supposed to stop March 12th, but I'm going to have to extend it 5 days. But what happened was in 1999, I was asked to present a paper for this conference that was going to mark the 100th anniversary of Korean immigration to Hawaii. So I did a ton of research then. I wrote an academic paper. A lot of them were interviews, and it was about my grandmother who had an involvement with the first U.S. appointed dictator to Korea, Syngman Rhee. And he was involved with our family, family survival, et cetera, from the early plantation days. And I couldn't get the editors of the History Journal, these old Korean men, wouldn't allow me to publish the paper because we all knew that Syngman Rhee had proposed marriage to my grandmother and how he was involved with our family. And then my great grandmother said, no, he's too old. And this was just common knowledge. And they said, you need paper proof, right? Because this is text and this is a history paper. And I refused to take it out. So because of this, I'd never published this paper. It lay fallow for years. Okay, all this research. Flash forward this many years, and I was trying to think about, okay, I also didn't feel ready to write I wanted to write a historical piece, but at the time then I didn't feel like I had the craft skills. So flash forward about 20 years, I'm like, okay, I think I can do this. And, but what's interesting, what's happened is it's around this time that my mother's photography exhibit debuted. My mother debuted as a photographer at the age of 85.
I am loving this.
She took all these series of photos in 1956 to 57, color photos of post-war Korea. She's the only woman and Korean American woman photographer known to have taken these photos. So she had a little online show, and I've been also very interested in the plantation stuff. This is a big interest for me, the first generation of Korean Asian American immigrants. And so I was thinking about my mom and the stories that she shared, and then about how a lot of my what started me writing were these children's books. Charlotte's Web, Strawberry Girl by Lois Lensky, and Laura Ingalls Wilder. And that's, I used to ask my mother, why can't we churn butter? Just like, and so because of this, I'm finishing up. I'm going to write a children's book. This is what I'm going to do with the research.
So wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Really neat.
And it's something, we journey. I'm taking my mother to the plantation in a couple days, and we're going to walk around and look, and it's fun.
Very cool. Very cool.
That is really cool. I actually have not had the guts to look at my older stuff. I really should go back and look, because I'm sure some of it's not as bad as I remember.
Too funny.
Might be inspirational to do something else with it.
Right.
Catherine, do you have a writing mode versus research mode?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, because sometimes it can be kind of two sides. And but then sometimes it's like the research can feed the creative side. I think with this new poetry memoir, The Miseducation of a Dyslexic Girl, what I'm finding is like, a lot of the research about like brain science, or what is normal, or being brainwashed into thinking what is normal, or all of that is and also thinking like it's a kind of a story of childhood, going through like all these different school things, thinking I didn't remember anything, but suddenly I do remember things that I feel like, it's sometimes it can be so energizing. But, I know like for Immigrant Daughter, there's a tiny bit about the Croatian War. And I must have seen like 10 documentaries and read like 4 books to write 2 pages. To write 2 pages of this kind of prosy poem in there. But yeah, so I feel like it's nice when it's like, I think it's nice when you're really in the creative mode and you're doing a lot of writing, and then you're just to keep touching back on allowing it to feed, but it's hard. I definitely would put the writing first. And
more fun, more rewarding.
Because it is like you can just feel like I can't go on until I know this thing, but then you get stuck with not going on. And
then you end up cutting the thing.
That happens too, right? I have another question from the audience. This is from Megan Franzen. Oops, where did it go? Here it is. What role does travel play in your creative processes in general? And do you hope your children will use travel as a spark for creativity, if you do as well?
On my end, I mean, travel was I think I went on trips to all the different places in the book except for one country. And did
you get fellowships for that, or did you just go because you needed the research done?
Some was from before, and then so before I started writing, some of the trips were, so or before I didn't start writing till I was like in my mid-20s, or and then some I use student loans for that I'm probably still paying off from graduate school, unfortunately. And yeah. So, but that was really, like, if you can't travel physically, then trying to find ways to travel. I hope my kids travel, a lot and experience that, because I think it's incredible to just walk down. We went down the same street that's on the cover. This last summer, I took my boys here and we went to the island and we found the same street where the picture was taken. My dad took this picture in 1974, and
Wow.
I got to walk down this street with my boys, and my husband took a picture of us. And it was so meaningful to them, because even though they haven't really read the book, that they know about the picture, and it felt like we were walking through history together, but because of the book, or else they wouldn't have felt that way.
That's really neat. Stephanie, Sandell, do you travel for inspiration, or just because that's the way your life goes and then you move to
I think my life just defaulted to being an expatriate for a long time. Initially I'd gone to Asia to sort of, search for my roots, and then I just ended up there. I can't really say it was this like, oh, I'm dying to like explore Asia. It was just default geography. And I know I'm not supposed to say that, but that's true. And so, that became what I knew and what I was familiar with. So then it emerged in the book, right? Because I was living overseas. And so that's what happened.
Yes. I feel that I really, really wanted to immerse myself in the landscape that particularly Germaine was in. And at one time, she asked me if I would like to meet the historian in the village where La Colony was located, and well, yes. And so then I went on a road trip. It's like I rented a car, and that was just wonderful because I had to do things that I wouldn't normally do. I was totally out of my comfort zone, and I like that edge. And I think that edge really somehow does something to the writing. Doing something totally different now. I don't know where the edge is.
I don't know. You said you're still skiing, so that's pretty impressive if you ask me. Go ahead, Christina.
I just want to say I want to acknowledge David Harris, who wrote a comment that says, when Catherine read about her mother saying she'd sent for her great-grandmom later, the longing and futility reminded me a bit about the Ukrainians now blankly saying they will win this war. I have to say, I'm still stuck on what is God, I guess. Ever since Sandell said that, it just made me, it just brought me to that place like, why? And I do want to acknowledge that I think we all are in that place right now. And thank you for sharing what you thought.
Yeah, this has been a really amazing and fun, super bi-coastal, extra coastal from Maine to Hawaii with Queens in the middle, salon. Our next salon is on April the 12th. And it will feature Lauren Francis Sharma, Michelle Herman, and Susanna Horn. And what's the theme, Christina, for April?
The theme is difference, I think it is. If I'm
that'll
correct.
be fun. So that'll be on the second Tuesday of the month.
Resistance.
Resistance. Which is actually suddenly, as usual, our salons become extraordinarily prescient and pertinent, even though they get booked a year in advance. So resistance it is. Go Ukraine. And I wanted to thank all of the authors for tonight. I want to thank all of you who are watching for the first time live. Thank you so much for your comments, for your feedback, for your questions. Thank you for anybody who has watched through it on the playback. I'm talking to you in the future, on the past, during your time that you are now watching us. So thank you so much for watching. And do check out penparentis.org to see if you would like to be a title member, which is a way of keeping yourself in a community of writer parents and hopefully finishing your book or your chapbook or your poem or your essay or whatever it is that you're working on. We are here for you. We're a community of writer parents, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Feel free to donate. And if you would like to be a sponsor, you saw how beautiful I am to my sponsors. We love them. So feel free to contact me if you'd like to sponsor a show.
And also, whether you're a writer or not, let us know how you feel and what you think, and we just want to be connected.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you next month. Bye.